You're about to see why the cheapest cure for your most expensive homestead problems is sitting in a $5 box at the bottom of a grocery store shelf. And I'm not talking about one use. I'm talking about the one item that fixes plumbing, saves your animals, protects your food, cleans your equipment, extends the life of your soil, and costs less than a single professional service call. My name is David Klein, and I've watched neighbors spend thousands on solutions that a plain farmer solves for pocket change, and every single time the answer traces back to the same worn box. Most people think they understand what this mineral does, but they've only scratched the surface. There's a reason my grandfather kept it the way he kept seed corn, as something you never run out of. And there's a reason what I'm about to show you gets buried in the last chapter of Homestead books, instead of on the first page where it belongs. Here's what separates the homesteader who calls the veterinarian from the one who doesn't. And it has nothing to do with being cheap. It has everything to do with understanding what actually works. Borax isn't magic. It's a mineral. It comes out of the ground in California. It gets crushed, boxed, and shipped to you for $5. And because it's a mineral, not a chemical compound, not a manufactured product, not something with a shelf life, it will sit in your cellar for 30 years and come out stronger than the day you bought it. That is not sentiment. That is geology. But here's the part that surprises people, and here's why most of what you've heard about borax is incomplete or just wrong. The power of borax on a working homestead isn't what it does in isolation. It's what it does when you use it the way plain farmers have used it for generations. In combination, in prevention, in small, steady applications over time instead of in emergencies. That changes everything. And it means the problem you're about to spend $500 fixing started 6 months ago when you didn't use borax correctly. Let me give you the honest account, because there is a lot of talk about borax, and some of it is hype, and some of it is absolutely dangerous, and you deserve to know which is which before you use it anywhere near your family or your animals. I'm going to show you 10 applications that actually work, tested over decades, not once but consistently. And I'm going to show you why they work and exactly how much money each one saves you. And more importantly, I'm going to show you the mistakes that turn a $5 solution into a $1,000 problem. Because borax is not a magic powder, it's a tool. And like every tool, it can work beautifully in the right hands and cause real damage in the wrong ones. The first application: keeping your water system from destroying itself. Most homesteaders on a well system face the same slow catastrophe: hard water. It builds up inside your pipes, your fixtures, your hot water tank, and it does it invisibly for years, until suddenly you're looking at a $3,000 repair or a complete system replacement. The water isn't dirty. It looks clean, but it's full of minerals, calcium and magnesium, that calcify and accumulate. A plumber will tell you that you need a water softening system. A good one costs $2,000 to $5,000 installed, and you'll pay him a service call every year to maintain it. But here's what plain farmers know that plumbers aren't going to volunteer. A small amount of borax added to your system at the beginning of winter prevents most of that buildup before it starts. How much? About a teaspoon per 100 gallons. You're not treating the whole system. You're introducing just enough borax to alter the chemistry so minerals precipitate, fall out, instead of sticking to your pipes. It's gentle chemistry, not aggressive intervention. And over a winter season, the difference in buildup is measurable. Some farmers use a teaspoon once a month. Some use half a teaspoon every other week. The key is consistency. Small amounts, regular intervals, not all at once. The cost is negligible. You're using maybe a tablespoon of borax across an entire season. The savings are genuine. You extend the life of your pipes by years. You reduce the mineral crust inside your fixtures. You keep your hot water tank cleaner. And you do it for about $3 versus a $1,000 repair call when something finally clogs and you have no choice. But here's the critical mistake people make. They think if a little borax is good, more borax is better. It's not. Too much borax in your water system actually changes the pH too far in the other direction and can corrode certain metals. You're not trying to kill everything in the water. You're trying to prevent one specific problem: moderation. This is true for every application I'm going to show you. The second application: protecting your animals from parasites without poisoning them. This is where most of what you read about borax becomes dangerous, and I need to be direct about this. Borax is toxic in high doses, period. It will harm animals. It will harm people. That is not a secret. That's basic chemistry. But borax at therapeutic doses, the small, carefully measured amounts, can be used safely as a parasite control tool that costs you nearly nothing and works better than the expensive dewormers that farmers spend hundreds on every season. The difference comes down to understanding the concentration. A chicken is a small animal. A cow is a large one. The amount that works for poultry would absolutely harm a horse. The amount that helps a horse would have no effect on a cow. This is why dosing matters. This is why you can't just sprinkle borax everywhere and expect miracles. Many plain farmers use a borax solution, 1 tablespoon of borax dissolved in a gallon of water, as a mineral supplement for poultry, particularly in late summer when parasites peak. They offer it as drinking water, 1 day a week, usually on a Wednesday or Thursday. The borax concentration is so low that it functions as a trace mineral, not a poison. It assists the bird's own immune system in controlling parasitic load without killing the bird. A gallon of that solution costs maybe 30 cents to make. A commercial parasite control product for the same flock costs $15 to $20. And most farmers who use borax report fewer parasite-related losses than those relying on commercial treatments alone. But, and this is enormous, this does not work for every animal, and the dosing changes for everything. You cannot treat a horse the way you treat a chicken. You cannot treat a goat the way you treat a cow. And you absolutely cannot give borax to young animals or pregnant animals without veterinary guidance. If you're going to experiment with this, and I'm not recommending you do without research, you start with the smallest, least valuable animal in your operation. You observe for weeks. You look for changes in health, behavior, appetite, coat condition. You keep records, and you understand that you are working outside conventional practice, which means that if something goes wrong, the veterinarian won't be able to help you because they don't know what you did. This isn't a reason to avoid it. It's a reason to be educated about it. The Amish and Mennonite farmers I know who use borax for animal health didn't learn it from the internet. They learned it from fathers and grandfathers who had been doing it for 50 years. They understood the risks because they had watched someone make a mistake and learned from it. That kind of knowledge, when you don't have it, requires humility. The third application, soil amendment that actually increases nutrient availability. This is the application that most commercial agricultural shows won't talk about because there's no profit in teaching you something that costs $5 and works for 3 years. Boron, the active mineral in borax, is a micronutrient that most soils are actually deficient in, even though farmers never test for it and never think about it. The deficiency is silent. Your plants don't die. They just don't thrive. They grow smaller. They produce less. They're more susceptible to disease. And because you can't see the problem, you assume something else is wrong, so you buy more nitrogen, more phosphorus, more potassium, all the macronutrients, when what the soil actually needs is a trace element that costs almost nothing. Plain farmers, especially those who've been farming the same land for generations, know this intuitively. They'll add a small amount of borax to their garden beds or fields, usually about 1 pound per acre, mixed into the soil at planting time, and the response is immediate and visible within weeks. The plants grow bushier, the leaves are darker green, the fruit sets heavier, the disease resistance improves, and the cost is a fraction of $1. A pound of borax is $5. 1 pound covers an acre. If you're growing half an acre of vegetables, you're spending 50 cents on a boron amendment that increases your yield by 10 to 15% over the season. That's real agriculture. That's why it matters. But, and there's always a but, too much boron becomes toxic to plants. You can actually burn your soil with borax if you're not careful. The window between deficiency and toxicity is narrow. For most vegetable gardens, you never need more than 1 tablespoon per 100 square feet of bed space, worked into the top few inches of soil. You don't broadcast it, you don't spray it, you mix it in gradually. And you do it once, maybe twice a season, not every week. The soil needs very little boron to function well. Too much becomes a poison to plants, just as much as too little creates deficiency. This is where the knowledge breaks down for most homesteaders who start experimenting. They read a post online that says borax helps plants. They don't read the dosing. They don't understand the difference between trace minerals and macronutrients. They don't grasp that boron is needed in such tiny amounts that most home gardeners won't ever need to add it unless they're growing on sandy soils or in regions with historically low boron levels. They dump borax into their beds like it's fertilizer, and then they're confused when their plants suffer from boron toxicity and they blame the borax instead of understanding that they overdosed. That's user error. That's not a failure of the mineral. The fourth application: disinfecting tools and equipment without chemicals. This is the application that surprises people because it sits at the intersection of cost, effectiveness, and simplicity. Every farmer, every homesteader knows the problem. Tools get contaminated. You use a shovel in a sick animal's pen, and now that shovel is a vector for disease to the next animal or the next field. You cut into rotting wood with a saw, and now the blade is full of fungal spores. You handle animal waste and then touch your equipment, and pathogens transfer. A professional solution, buying new equipment or using chemical disinfectants, costs money and introduces toxins. A borax solution costs almost nothing and works. Mix 1 tablespoon of borax into a gallon of water. That's your disinfectant solution. It's not as harsh as bleach, which corrodes metal and damages tool handles. It's not as expensive as commercial farm disinfectants, which can run $30 for a small container. It's neutral enough that it won't harm your hands if you're working in it regularly, but it's strong enough that it will kill most common pathogens, bacteria, fungi, viruses, within 15 to 20 minutes of contact. You dip your tools in this solution, let them soak briefly, rinse them in clean water, dry them, and the contamination is gone. The cost per cleaning is less than a penny. The protection is genuine. Many farmers use this method before moving animals between pastures, before starting work in a sick animal's space, before entering a nursery with young animals, and after any work involving manure or contaminated soil. The Amish farmers I know often keep a dedicated bucket of this solution in the barn, refresh it once a week, and use it religiously. The result is lower disease pressure across the entire operation. Animals stay healthier because the environment is cleaner. You don't need antibiotics because you prevent infection through sanitation, not treat it through medication. And the investment is $5 for a box of borax that will make 10,000 gallons of disinfectant solution over the course of a year. That's the pattern you're seeing now, and it will continue through every application. Borax is not a miracle. It's a tool. It's cheap, it's effective when used correctly, it's toxic when misused. And most importantly, it works best not as an emergency solution, but as part of a comprehensive management strategy where prevention is the goal, not cure. This is why Amish farmers keep borax the way they keep salt. Not because it's magic, because it's essential, affordable, and it prevents expensive problems before they start. Now, let me show you something most people never think about. Once you understand what borax actually is and how it works, you start to see it differently. You stop thinking of it as a cleaning product, and you start thinking of it as a tool. A foundational tool, like knowing how to tie a knot or sharpen a blade. And that changes everything about how you use it and what you expect from it. There is something about the way plain farmers think about supplies that most of us have never learned. They do not ask, what is the fanciest way to solve this? They ask instead, what is the way that costs almost nothing, works every time, and does not wear out? And that question changes the answer completely. Borax answers that question for more jobs than most people realize. Let me walk you through 5 things that most people spend real money on that borax handles for almost nothing. Not because borax is some miracle cure, but because these 5 problems are common, they repeat, they cost money to outsource, and borax prevents them in a way that works. The first one is laundry. Now, most people think of borax as a laundry booster, and it is, but that is almost the least interesting thing about it. The real value is what it prevents. Hard water minerals cling to your clothes. They make colors dull. They make whites gray. They make fabrics feel stiff and old before they should. A water softener costs $600 to install, and then costs money every month to run. Borax costs $5 and does the same job for a family of 4 for about 3 months. Not a water softener, understand, but for the purposes of keeping your clothes looking good and lasting longer, it does the work for a fraction of the cost. You use half a cup per load. That is it. No measuring spoons, no complicated ratios. Half a cup. Your clothes come out softer, they stay brighter longer, and a single box does 20 or 30 loads depending on the size of your family. Do the math. That is 15 cents a load for softer clothes and longer-lasting fabrics. A commercial water softening system is $600 upfront, plus $50 a month in maintenance and salt. Borax is $5, sits on a shelf, never breaks, and does not need electricity. The second thing is odor in spaces where animals live. Now, here is what most people do not understand. Odor is not just a smell. It is decomposing organic matter releasing gases into the air. It is a sign that bacteria and mold are active and multiplying. A professional barn deodorizer costs $40 or $50, and you buy it over and over. Borax absorbs moisture where odor grows. No moisture, no bacterial decomposition, no smell. You sprinkle it on the floor of a chicken coop, a goat shed, a horse stall. It absorbs the urine before it sits and ferments. It cuts odor without harming the animals. A single box of borax, spread across a small animal shelter, lasts months. Cost difference is immediate. A commercial odor control product, $60 for maybe 4 or 5 months. Borax, $5, 9 or 10 months or longer if you use it right. And here is the thing most people miss. While the commercial product is only masking smell, borax is actually reducing the conditions that cause it. It is preventive, not cosmetic. The third use is something fewer people know about, and it matters if you store grain or have mice problems. Borax mixed with sugar and a tiny bit of water makes a paste. When you put that paste in places where rodents travel, they eat it. They take it back to their nests. It kills the rodents without poison that can harm larger animals or contaminate food stores. A poison control service sends someone out to your farm, charges you $150, and uses chemicals that have warnings all over them. A box of borax and some sugar from your kitchen costs under $2. Now I will say this plainly. You do this carefully. You put the paste in places where children cannot reach it. You label what you have done. You do not take shortcuts on safety, because you are saving money. That is not wisdom. That is foolishness. But done right, with attention and care, it works. Farmers have used this method for generations because it is effective, cheap, and you control exactly what you are putting on your property. The fourth use is textiles and wool. Woolens are beautiful and warm, but they attract moths and other insects that eat fibers. People buy cedar blocks, lavender sachets, and expensive wool-preserving sprays. A small amount of borax mixed with herbs or wool shavings put into a cloth bag keeps moths away without the harsh smell of commercial mothballs. You hang it in a closet, fold it with woolens when you store them, and it protects your investment while smelling clean and pleasant. A wool mothball costs $2. You need many of them for a closet. A box of borax makes enough moth-repelling sachets to fill every closet, every storage box, every wool storing space in your house for $5. The difference in cost is 10 to 1. And your house smells like herbs and cleanliness instead of chemicals. The fifth use is something a lot of people face but do not talk about openly. Mold and mildew in damp spaces. A basement that sweats. A bathroom that gets mildew in corners no matter how much you clean. A barn space that stays humid even in dry weather. Borax powder, brushed into the affected area and left to sit, kills mold at the root. It does not just clean the surface like bleach does. It prevents the mold from coming back as quickly because borax changes the pH of the surface, making it harder for mold spores to take hold. You do not need expensive mold removal services. You do not need to tear out drywall or replace floorboards. A $5 box of borax stops the problem in most cases, and it stops it without filling your home with the fumes of industrial mold killers. Now, here is what connects all 5 of these uses. None of them are emergencies. None of them are things you suddenly need at 2 in the morning. They are all preventive. They are all about managing problems before they become expensive. And that is the farmer's way. You do not wait for the roof to leak. You check it before the season. You do not wait for pests to overrun the barn. You manage populations before they explode. You do not wait for mold to spread through a wall. You treat it when you first see it. That philosophy costs less money than waiting for catastrophe and then fixing it. A lot less. Most people in towns and suburbs have lost that knowledge. They react. They call someone when something breaks. They pay the emergency fee, the service charge, the expensive solution. Farmers prevent. And that is why a single box of borax sits on a shelf in a prepared house, and one box of the right thing beats an entire shelf of quick fixes. This is the kind of knowledge that saves money, not in dramatic ways, but in steady, quiet ways. month after month, year after year. You never spend $300 fixing a roof leak because you sealed the small problem when you saw it. You never pay for professional pest removal because you managed the population before it took hold. You never replace woolens because moths got to them, because you protected them cheaply from the start. And that is the real reason why this simple mineral, unchanged for over 100 years, still sits on the shelves of prepared people who know how to think about prevention instead of panic. Because here is what most people never understand about homesteading, about keeping a place, about making things last. The expensive fix is not the one you plan for. It is the one that sneaks up on you. It is the call to the plumber at midnight because a pipe froze and burst. It is the emergency trip to the feed store because something got into your grain. It is the desperate phone call to the contractor because water found its way into your walls. Those are the fixes that cost real money. Those are the ones that take weeks and leave you scrambling. But the borax fix, the vinegar fix, the baking soda fix, these happen on a Tuesday morning before anything gets worse. They happen with materials you already own. They happen for the price of a cup of coffee. And they happen because you were thinking 3 months ahead instead of 3 minutes ahead. I have seen a man lose a whole barn, timber, animals, tools, everything, because he did not treat one corner for $10 worth of materials when he had the chance. I have seen a woman spend $4,000 replacing floor joists because she did not catch the early rot with borax when it was the size of a coin. These were not people who did not care. They were people who did not know. Or they knew but did not act. Or they acted too late. And borax would have stopped it before it started. That is not fear talking. That is experience. And experience is what teaches you that the cheapest insurance policy you will ever buy is a box of borax and the discipline to use it. Now, I know not all of you live the way we do. Not all of you have a barn or a cellar or the time to think 5 years ahead, but all of you have something worth protecting. A house, a garden, a family, belongings that matter. And all of you spend more money than you need to because something small turned into something large. Borax will not fix everything. Nothing will. But borax will fix more things, more cheaply, and more permanently than almost anything else you can keep on a shelf. And if you keep it, if you really keep it and use it and think about prevention instead of crisis, you will save thousands of dollars across the years. Not because borax is magic, but because prevention is. So when you walk past that plain box at the store, the one on the bottom shelf that nobody looks at anymore, stop, pick it up, read what it says, and remember that it has been sitting there for 100 years because people who think ahead knew it worked. It worked for my grandmother, it worked for her mother, and if you are willing to think like they did, it will work for you too. Keep borax, keep it dry, keep it in places where you need it, and keep the habit of checking things before they break. That is all there is to it. That is all there has ever been to it. And that is why I have borax in my house, the same way other folks keep salt. Thank you for watching. If you found this useful, I would be grateful if you would subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the next one. Hit the like button if this resonated with you, and please turn on the notification bell so you get word whenever we upload something new. We are building a community of people who believe that things can last, that prevention beats panic, and that the old ways work because they were tested by time. We would be glad to have you with us. End of complete script. Total character count across all 3 parts, approximately 20,000 characters of pure narration structured in the format specified, with closing CTA integrated organically into the final moments.